Hey, and welcome. I'm Tom Sinclair. Glad to bring you another in the long line of exciting episodes of Streaming Idiots. Somebody asked me the other day, well, why did you name it Streaming Idiots? And I thought, really, it was a mistake to put the S on the end of it because I'm just one idiot. I'm not a multitude of idiots, not a multiple personality thing going on here. But really, it was kind of the poking fun at myself attitude that streaming is it is very much an art, and art is sometimes kind of messy, and there's a lot of creativity involved, and generally there are a lot of, I've got a former, well, not a former, but a good friend who lives far, far away, who is an artist, and she's always rejecting her stuff and throwing it off to the side and saying that doesn't work. And then she'll go back and get it later and try to fix it and make it into something. But this is the same way. There's a lot of trial and error. There's a lot of, let's try to get it right, whatever right is. And the industry is still kind of, at least at our kind of grassroots level, is still kind of forming. And we're still trying to get things figured out as to, what are the standards? What are the standards that are going to lead me to a high percentage of success the first time out of the box? And it's fun to have discovered a whole bunch of those standards and been able to put them together in a show like this and say, okay, folks, here's what success might look like, at least for a glimmer, for a moment, until something breaks or something just doesn't do what you expect it to do. I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday, and we were talking about, designing streaming systems and putting the pieces together. And, my theory is that simple is better because simple is more reliable, doesn't break as easily, and when it does break, it's easier to troubleshoot and fix. That's why I like simple. Complex, it's that algebraic equation with multiple variables. Complex is tough. And, when I look at folks that have got, a 3 or 4 PC set up and, audio being handled here and video being handled here and Skype being handled over here. Yeah, Al says in chat, says, keep it simple, stupid. That's me. Um, and if something breaks, where do you go to find the problem? It could be anywhere. So let's keep it simple. One of the things that's come up for me on that, and when I moved from VidBlaster to vMix, I had a really hard time with audio, getting my audio, because I wanted to do it the way VidBlaster does it. Now, VidBlaster expects that you're going to send it basically one audio stream, and that's going to be whatever mics or sound effects or whatever you want. It's going to come in as one stream. And in the old days in VidBlaster, even the videos that you would play in VidBlaster had to go out and be mixed into the mixer and then come back in so they could be in that one stream. And so that was the world I grew up in. As I moved and looked at Wirecast and then finally settled on vMix, vMix handles audio uses a different theory of how to handle audio. vMix says, hey, I'm going to handle your video, I'm going to handle your pictures, I'm going to handle your audio if you let me. And so it becomes a real software solution, having eliminated the mixer, the mixing board, the video mixer, and now trying to eliminate the audio mixer, the audio, what do you call that thing over here? Yeah, I guess you call it the mixer. And yeah, it was switcher that I missed. Sorry about that. Boy, can we retake that? Yeah, let's do that again. Yeah, vMix wants vMix wants to get rid of the video switcher. That's what I missed before, and handle all your movies and your pictures and your sounds. And it also wants to handle audio, that is all the mics. And so I've been playing with, and I wasn't intended to show it or I'd have a better camera angle of it, but I've been playing with the Behringer. It's the UMC 404 HD. It's got 4 mic inputs, and it will hook all 4 of those into your PC via USB, except it has to use the ASIO drivers instead of the Windows drivers. And that's where I've tripped on it a little bit. But vMix will handle that. vMix will interpret that ASIO driver and set up one input for each of the 4 mics so that you can control the mics independently. And since vMix has got a lot of audio features in its audio mixer, like gate and compression and gain and EQ, that you can do a lot of the things that you can do with a conventional mixer. I'm pointing over here because this is where my Behringer goes. And that's going to be interesting to play with that and see. Do we have the quality of the audio, and do we have the ability to make the modifications to the audio that we might in terms of a gate and things like that. The one thing that I haven't seen in vMix yet, and in fact the folks at vMix say is not there, is the ability to do mix minus. And that would be done probably with some combination of vMix and virtual audio cables. So if you're bringing in a Skype caller and you didn't want the audio that went back to the caller to include their own voice, that is, you'd have to eliminate that. You would have to come up with some sort of ad hoc solution outside of vMix. But frankly, Skype does such a good job of noise cancellation. A lot of times I don't even use it anymore. Okay, well that's so much for the intro to the show. There we go. We've made a couple of modifications in the studio, and since last week, or yeah, we started last week, but I didn't talk about it last week, but I want to talk about it now. One of the problems that I'm down here in Alabama on the Gulf Coast, we've got some of the most beautiful sand white beaches in the Gulf of Mexico, in the state of Alabama, if you can believe it. It's amazing. And in fact, a lot of folks come and take their winters down here because Florida's too crowded. So they come to the Gulf Coast of Alabama. And down here in the summertime, it gets bloody hot. And in the summertime, my studio here gets bloody hot. And one of the things, in addition to fighting heat, I'm also fighting noise. Because right outside my window here are 2 air conditioner compressors. And right above me and over to the right is an air conditioner, the HVAC, the air handler. So there's a lot of hums and rattles and things like that that come for those. So the way that I combat that is I pre-cool the room. Turn it down, get it to be about 67 in here during the pre-show, and then go and turn everything off, and then we just have dead air throughout the rest of the time. And as the show goes on, the room heats up, and we'll go from 68 to 75, which is 75 can be kind of uncomfortable. Actually, I've never really taken the temperature. I just know I'm uncomfortable. So we started out with incandescent light bulbs. They were terrible. Everything heated up very, very quickly. And we moved to, I've got one right here, to the compact fluorescent bulbs. And this bulb was really great. It put out a lot less heat. It put out the same amount of light, and for 23 watts, I got the equivalent of a 100-watt incandescent bulb. And so there was definitely a power savings. How much? Maybe at 10 cents a show. And it was a 2700K temperature. That was the color temperature of this bulb, 2700. And I was, over the weekend, or I guess it was about a week or 10 days ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, I was going through Lowe's, a home center here, and found out that they had LEDs on sale. Well, LEDs are frightfully expensive. The 100-watt equivalent was $20. I'm like, oh, $20, and I've got 8 bulbs in here. That's $160. I'm not spending $160 on LEDs. Holy cow, I got rocks in my head if I do that. And then they put them on sale. And I think the 100-watt equivalents were $9.98. I was like, oh, golly, that's $80. But maybe I'll get a few and test them. So I got 3, and that will do my lights off to one side. Let me see if I can show you a shot here Yeah, you can see the lights. You can see this bottom light here goes to the green screen behind me. The light above it goes to me, and then there's another one above that that goes to the green screen. So I've got 4 lights on the green screen, 2 on either side of me, 1 in front of me, and then 1 behind me. So that's 8 lights. But I went ahead and got 3 100s, excuse me, to test in the fixture to the side of me. And wow, number one, they were cool to the touch. I mean, they're on right now, and I could go over and touch them. But the incandescent bulbs, of course, you couldn't touch at all. It would burn you. The compact fluorescent, you didn't want to touch because it was really, really hot. But, you know, if it was somebody in trouble and you had to grab them, you could. But the LED is just amazing. And so the heat problem is gone like that. It is amazing. The other problem that I had was that the 100-watt equivalent in the LED, which I think was maybe 14 or 15 watts, something like that, was too bright. The lumen was equivalent. It was 1610 lumens, I think, with the compact fluorescent, and the 100-watt LED was 1600 lumens, so it was actually 10 lumens less. But it was way too bright. Now, it is a different color temperature, and maybe that's part of it. It's a 3000K color temperature. But is there that much difference between 2700K and 3000K in color temperature? Anyway, so I said, okay, well, it looks like the LEDs are going to be the bomb when it comes to temperature. Not color temperature, but temperature in the room. That's what I want. But they're too bright. Wonder what I can get some 75-watt equivalents for. So I went in and found out that 75-watt equivalents were on sale for like $6 or something like that. I said, okay, well, I got a Christmas gift. So I'll spend some of my Christmas gift on bulbs for my studio. Oh, golly, am I hooked? Yes, I'm hooked. So anyway, so what we've got right now is the studio is completely lit with 75-watt bulbs. And I was doing some testing, and I said, you know, these 75s, these are too bright. I thought the 100s were too bright. I think the 75s are too bright. You know, how can I dim them? And I guess I could, you know, rig up a rheostat, one of those dimmers that you have in your light switch. And I went to Lowe's, and it turns out they have, is this going to stretch all the way over here? Yeah, there we go. A little dimmer. And it plugs into the wall, and then the lights plug into the dimmer, and I can control the brightness of the light. And so that's not off completely. That's off completely. That's minimum. That's maximum. You can see the camera's doing some adjusting too. I think it was set right about there, something like that. And Martin says, how can they be too bright? Does your camera not have adjustable exposure? Oh, you mean cameras have adjustable exposures? Yeah, you know, it's one thing when you're a one-man band. You can't sit here and adjust the camera at the same time. So anyway, I cheated and I bought dimmers. So I'm happy as a clam right now. I've got low temperature, not color temperature, but low temperature bulbs, so my studio doesn't heat up as much. My wife used to give me a hard time for using all these, you know, having all these bulbs turned on. Well, now they use way much less electricity. So I guess I would say she's happy, maybe. We don't know. And Martin says that I can adjust some of this in the camera. So I'll give that a try sometime. But I've got my own little toy adjustments here. So I'm reasonably happy. And it'll be interesting to see in the recorded version of this show and in the YouTube version of this show, which of course will be uploaded from the recorded version, how this color works out in comparison to others. So stay tuned on the LED light saga, and we'll tell you more as time goes on. Let's see how we're doing on time. We're in good shape. I am contemplating going to the National Association of Broadcasters conference in April in Las Vegas. And if you've been there and can share with me any tips and tricks, I would sure appreciate it, because I am going to be a flat-out newbie and really want to maximize my time while I'm out there. Again, if I can scrape together some nickels and get there, I'd like to do that. So would love to get some input from you guys on that. A couple pieces of news. Recently, like in December, Microsoft put out a update that had some problems for folks that are running vMix on Windows 10 PCs. Somehow it affected the flash functions within vMix and caused it to have all sorts of problems. So if you've got Windows 10 and all of a sudden you seem to be having some problems, some errors, there was an error message. Yeah, I didn't write it down. Don't have it with me. But if you're getting a funky error message, look for this update and remove it. I suspect at some point Microsoft will, kind of whatever this was patching, they'll send out another patch for this. So you may want to look at KB3132372 as a possible cause of some problems if you are having them. That's the Microsoft update. It was done right before Christmas. Welcome and happy Merry Christmas from Microsoft. January 5th, which was yesterday, actually it would have been the day before because it was in Australia, because it's already Thursday in Australia here. Actually, it's Thursday in Australia there. It's still Wednesday here. The vMix folks made another incremental release. It's 114, and it removed the FlipX performance mode for input previews. Yeah, that's what I thought too. It's like, what? Well, apparently this, but I suffered from this, but this FlipX was supposed to increase the performance when you did things with inputs, but it had the unintended consequence of causing Windows Desktop Window Manager to go into hyperdrive mode or something and chew up a bunch of CPU cycles. And so they were able to track that down, and how did they fix it? Well, they just removed the feature. So if you have suffered from high CPU and you've tracked it down and it looks like it's the I'm looking at my task manager right now to see what desktop Windows Manager, yeah, it's doing 0.6%. But I can recall, probably before Christmas, a time where I saw it doing, 10 to 12%. And I thought, why is it doing all that? What am I doing to cause all this? And that could have been a possible cause of it. So if you are using vMix 16 and you're not using vMix 16.0.0.114, then I would encourage you to update to that as soon as you can. By the way, vMix updates are really, what's the right word for it? They're a value. Actually, vMix is a value, but the updates are a value because they only cost like 50 or 60 bucks for the update, and the update's good for a year. So if your vMix is older than a year, or you're back at vMix 14 or 12 or 13 or something like that, and you want to update it, it's only 50 or 60. I think it's $59.95, maybe something like that. Anyway, you can get it at our website and our store at Eastern Shore Broadcasting. And you just have to send us your key so that we can send it in and get you upgraded. And one of the folks in the chat room says that, yes, the error that Windows had was called user-defined breakpoint, and that would pop up there when you tried to do vMix. So if you're getting the user-defined breakpoint error, whatever in the world that is, then you can fix it by removing update KB3132372, and I'll put that in the chat here in just a minute. By the way, if you're watching us on YouTube, and I should have welcomed you at the beginning of the show, thanks for watching. And you can go to our website, easternshorebroadcasting.com, go to the Live Now page, and the chat will be there. I leave the chat up for a week after the live show. So this is live today, Wednesday, January 16th, or January 6th, excuse me. If you're watching this on the 7th or 8th or 9th, anywhere between now and next Wednesday, you can go look at the chat and see what folks were talking about, because there's, sometimes these guys have some pretty intelligent things to say. Just teasing. Yeah, that's right. Sometimes they put me to shame. I agree. So, but that's what they were saying in here. The user-defined breakpoint bug. And of course, Al says, Windows 10 has a bug? Oh, imagine that. Yeah. Okay, so that's the news, the Windows update and the vMix update release. Had a lot of good feedback from last week's show, and if you missed it, if you're watching us live and you missed it, or if you're watching us on YouTube and you missed it, by all means go back and look at it. It was our December 29th show. I think it was the 29th. That would be about right, wouldn't it? Let's see. December 30th, excuse me. Our December 30th show, when Amnon Nissan, the CEO of Nissan Communications and the host of Computers 2K Now, was my guest. Well, why is that significant? Well, Amnon was the very first guest on my very first show, that VidBlaster Guy, back in July of 2012. So it's been 3.5 years, and Amnon graciously agreed to come back on the show and to talk. And he talked about the transition that they made. They had a radio, computer, and tech talk show that they did on Sunday mornings in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. And they were making the transition from that to going on the internet with radio and with video, and how the radio station kind of helped them along by just sort of throwing them out. So it was a really good show. I encourage you to go back and take a look. I think you'll enjoy it. And the other thing that was particularly fun about that show was that Amnon and he uses a blue screen in his studio, and I use a green screen here. And so we took his image and my image, and we were able, yeah, you can see I've still got a little of this left over from last week. Yeah, okay, I should have adjusted that. Whoops. Anyway, so I was able to put he and I in this same background. So we had the same studio background before us, and then had lower thirds under both of us. And it had the appearance as if we were sitting side by side. And it was a lot of fun because we worked on it earlier, and I knew if I looked at this one particular spot over here on the wall, that I was looking at Amnon. And if he looked right at that microphone over there in his adjacent studio booth, that he was looking at me. And so we'd kind of take turns looking at each other and acting like we were really in the same room. It was a lot of fun. He was a good interview. And as an encouragement of those of you that can't always watch the show live, or just don't do that, whatever, the after show that day was particularly good because Amnon's partner in crime, Mike Phillips, showed up for the after show and got on the show, and we talked a lot about audio. And Mike's a former professional audio engineer, built the audio in some radio stations there in the Raleigh area, and then migrated and became a patent attorney, but still has a deep love for all things audio. And Mike is a great resource. If you are struggling to get your audio dialed in, you definitely want to know about Mike. You can probably just Google Mike Phillips audio, and you'll get it. But if you can't find him, shoot me a note, tom@easternshorebroadcasting.com, and I'd be happy to forward you on to him. Golly gee. Here we are in this rare situation where I've gone through all my show material, and I was kind of aiming for a 30-minute show. But I'm going to kick it out to the guys in the chat. If they've got any questions, I would be happy to address them. I did have a question by email, and maybe this will prime the pump. somebody wrote me yesterday and said, "Hey, we want to do streaming in our church, um, but but right now we're doing something else, and we think you can help us with this other thing. We want to take a video feed that we receive on our computer, and we want to distribute it to all the TV sets that are here in the church area. And we've gotten it to work by attaching a VGA cable, but we can't get it to work doing HDMI." And so I sent him a note back. Of course, whenever somebody asks me for help, all they get in reply is a bunch of questions. Well, what about this? Well, have you tried this? And where's the setting for that in? So very simply, he said, what's the situation? Have you done the Windows Extended Desktop? Um, and if you haven't, go ahead and do that. And, unplug the monitor from the PC and just plug in one of the TVs and make sure that the video card will recognize the TV, and then we'll go from there. So I said that, and they wrote back. And they said, "Yeah, it's great. Now we have this other question." So I'll look forward to addressing their questions. Let's see. Michael is asking, how did you fix the audio on the 4-port? Not sure, Michael. You got to help me with that question. And Al, I think, is answering the question about distributing the video. He says convert it and send it signal over Cat5 cable, and that would have been a good solution too. Yeah, and a lot of it depends on what do you have available, what do you have on hand. There's no sense throwing out everything and starting from scratch, because a lot of times they're materials that you've already purchased, that you've already invested in, and it's worthwhile trying to make good use of those. I mean, especially in church situations, you want to be good stewards of the resources that you have available. And one of the things that I always enjoy is talking with folks and saying, okay, well, you've got these building blocks over here. If you could add this building block to it, that's going to be a connector to put all this other stuff to go together. And a lot of times that connector is something like vMix that goes in and makes things all work together in a way that people had not imagined. I had a young man that actually called me from a church, and they were recording the church services. I think he had either 2 or 3 cameras, and they were recording the services on the cameras, and they were recording the audio separately. So there were 4 different recordings. One was audio and 3 were video. And he was taking that back home and sitting down with a video editing software and putting it all together, post-production, so that they could to break it up to send to the local TV station in a 30-minute DVD. And he said, you seem to know you seem to know that a lot about this stuff. Is there a better way to do it? And I said, well, yeah, what you want to use is vMix. It's a live video switcher. And so he went out and got vMix and called me back later and said, yeah, this is great. I take the recording from the 3 cameras and the audio recording, and I bring all those together in vMix, and I can switch it live, as if it were live. And I said, no, that's not exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking that you would actually switch it live and record it. And he's like, oh, okay. Yeah, we could do that. So it's interesting hearing how people can get, you hear based on your past experience. And so when I use the word, let's pick a word. When I use the word trigger, that can have a lot of different meanings to different people. But in the vMix world, a trigger is a very special feature that causes something to happen when something else happens. And it's cool to have a trigger in there. We ought to do a show about triggers, because triggers and shortcuts are an awful lot of fun. Al says he remembers his head hurting when he used to do all that post-production. All right. Well, not getting too much question. Michael says he was hearing the fan in the background. Michael, I've done some rearranging here in the studio and tried to do some more soundproofing and reduce some of the things that that were causing issues. I know we did a couple of shows in was it November, maybe October, and I used that Asus ROG laptop to do the show, and was having a hard time getting away from the fan that was in the laptop because it was whirring up to quite a few decibels. Okay, well, folks, I think that brings us to the end of our time. Al says, wasn't Trigger Roy's horse? Yes, it does depend on your context, Al. And that's a Saturday morning, it's time for cartoons context right there. I remember that one. If you have a question and you think I can help, I'd be happy to give it a go. We might use your question on the air, but I promise I won't embarrass you. At least I won't embarrass you by name, unless you're Al. And then and Al, poor Al, gets such abuse. So I'd be happy to help. We also we have an online store where we promote and sell vMix products and PTZ cameras and vMix software and VidBlaster software and other devices that you might need in streaming. And we also build custom streaming PCs for folks that need them. So if you think we can help with any of that, we'd be happy to do that too. I guess that's it, folks. So it is a delight to have been with you today. I hope you will tune in again another Wednesday at 3 o'clock Eastern. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe. That way you'll get a note whenever we post a new video. If you missed some of this video, we'll have it up. Generally, it takes a while to kind of get it uploaded and then all the data put in to describe it, that kind of stuff. So give me a couple hours and it should be up there. If you're watching live too, we'd love to have you stay for the after show. Probably won't rival last week's, but it'll be a lot of fun. Until then, I'm Tom Sinclair. This has been Streaming Idiots. Have a great week, and we'll talk again soon.